Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of Hipther Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Tech Quarterly Meetup in 2023. We are happy to have you here. And this time we are streaming on LinkedIn, which is something new for us. And the video will be, of course, available on YouTube later. And since these two sessions, the first two sessions of the day are so important, we are also going to showcase them on the Hipther Talks podcast. So to the subscribers on Spotify, Amazon Music, and etc. can hear them. So I will jump right directly into the subject because we have so many things to talk about today, and it's very great opportunity to have Arnas Liauksminas. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. We met in Vilnius last year. It's nice to see you again, but since 2022, things have changed for you. And you are now an Attaché for the environment from permanent delegation for the European Union from Lithuania. Is that correct?
Yes. So nice to see you, Zoltan. It's really passed some time, and it's good to see you again, even though it's online. And yes, some changes there are some changes in my career. I've previously been working as a lawyer and working with the ESG file. And now I'm trying to understand how all the businesses are done in Brussels. Yeah, so I'm working as an environmental attaché in the permanent representation of Lithuania to the EU.
All right. So I know you. Some of the people who are online know you, but many don't. So could you please give a short introduction of yourself and tell us a bit about your career?
So it's quite a tough question because my career is quite long already. So I'm a lawyer. I've been lecturing at one of the universities in Lithuania. And also I worked in practice, firstly in the public area, in the public sector as with the various question. The most recent was green public procurement. I was a person who was responsible for this reform in Lithuania. And afterwards, I was invited to work in the biggest law firm in Lithuania and in the Baltics. It's Alex. And I was working with ESG question and tried to help the clients to understand the importance of this file. And afterwards, again, I made a small switch off after the work at the law firm, I had many questions. How exactly all those rules are created? And I was really suspicious on that. And somehow all the cards went very correctly for me, and I applied for this position. I won the competition, and now I'm in Brussels in actually it's the library of our permanent representation. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so let's dive into the subject directly into ESG. So ESG, sorry about that. So what is ESG, and tell us why it's important?
Yeah, so usually letters ESG is translated very simply, environmental social governance. And until this point, it's quite clear that we will discuss on something that is related to these three areas. It's a very complex area. It has a set of different rules that businesses have to apply in their daily practices. 10 years ago or even earlier, ESG was not a novelty. It was introduced as a simple criteria to check the company's overall performance in these areas, just to be sure that the investments are going in the right direction. So it was understood as a simple set of the rules, nothing specific. But from a couple of years ago, it became a new tendency. It became a wave of various regulations. Most of them are coming from European Union. If we're talking about the EU market, some of them are coming from US in their markets, asking to prove the performance in these areas and to show what results have been reached. And a good performance in the area of ESG could mean that your company can get more investment, and all the businesses always wants to get some investment, and somehow this topic emerged and became very trendy. It has now some problems too with that trendiness, but that's how ESG is understood: environmental, social governance, a set of criteria, and that businesses have to apply and meet certain targets that these criteria should work.
All right, so I guess Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank did not have a good ESG program.
Usually actually those companies who can prove their transparency on ESG have a better overall
chance of survival.
Yeah.
All right, so you explained that you were working at Alex, and now that you are at the European Union, European Commission, you know more about how things work. So what are the ESG issues that currently most interest you? Has things changed in this
overall, we saw during this year a couple of game changers. Firstly, if you would look to the studies that were presented in the January of 2023, most of the consulting companies talked about things about the carbon footprint, about the biodiversity, how what businesses should do. But then the war in Ukraine have emerged, and we realized how shattered dream ESG. The ESG dream was really shattered because it's really hard to comply with many areas, because the investments were put into Ukraine, into unstable markets of Russia, and many companies have suffered. So that's one point. Another point, we still see the wave of the regulations that are coming from the European Union. In many ways, legal rule is a good thing, because it creates a more stable situation for the businesses. They can at least to predict what you can expect in one or another market. On the other hand, we see the problem that there are so many regulations and there are so many aspects related to ESG that it's really hard to catch all the tendencies and all the requirements. So that's a second problem. And thirdly, let's say European Commission adopted many regulations, and in some regulations there are it is written that Commission will adopt delegated acts, and some of them, especially in the EU taxonomy regulation, most of the delegated acts are not yet adopted. So the Commission is late. And for the businesses, it's also very hard, because they have to, let's say, report on environmental aspects, but the methodology itself is not yet adopted. So these things, at least it is a concern for the businesses and for those who are working in this field.
All right. So what areas of sustainability do you least enjoy?
Actually, all areas of ESG are interesting, but I think so we have to rethink how to apply ESG for the different businesses. ESG in a big company is one thing. ESG in a SME, a small or medium-sized company, it is different, and the businesses faces different problems. And I would say that current current understanding of ESG as a set of rules is not enough business focused. Yeah, you can talk about criteria, about the targets, but we also have to think what businesses can do and how these results, how the business should be accountable on various aspects. So I would say the least interesting aspect is, but it's very important, is talking about the transparency. Because how the companies have to report about the ESG performance, is it which methodologies they have applied, and these aspects are very important. But probably they are not very interesting because you just read the various methodologies and you have to go very in depth. So it's all, for me, it's more interesting to look to the specific result in a specific area, and if there was any positive impact for the environment or not.
All right. So before we talk about the measures and the data, I would like to ask. All right. So in a large company or corporation, ESG is existent, but on a small and medium based, is it existent, or is just something that they are being talked about, but not really implementing some measures?
If we look from the just legal perspective, we will see that currently only the major companies are obliged to report on ESG performance.
Okay.
Small and medium-sized companies are exempt. So for them, it's just a rule which is nice to have.
Okay.
Definitely, we see that with CSRD, Corporate Social Responsibility Directive, there will be a certain shift to a little bit smaller companies, but still, those companies will be quite big ones, and small and medium-sized companies are exempt. So these companies are in a gray area, but they might be impacted with the ESG especially in that case, if they are working in the supply chain and they're providing the services or goods to the major companies, because usually the big companies are asking their counterparts, do you have ESG policy? Okay. How you perform on these? What indicators you follow? So for SMEs, it usually is an advice, just try to go through at least follow what's happening in the market, look for the tendencies, and try at least to work on these things a little bit, that you could have a better, let's say, performance later in your daily work.
All right. So how do you define and measure the ESG performance of a company?
Yeah, so as I said, ESG is a set of rules. So in each category, you have a different criteria which might be followed up. So usually when we're talking about the environment, the usual things is the climate change. Sometimes it might be diversity in some areas, the carbon footprint, and etc. In social, we will talk about the forced labor, minimum wage, and other things. In the governance field, it will be talking about the gender balance in the boards and other criteria too. But overall, what I said in the beginning, it is very important to understand that the companies and the industries are very different. If we talk about the oil and gas industry, for sure, for them, the main focus will be carbon emission reduction. If we look to the pharmaceuticals industry, they will focus on a drug safety and drug quality. And So does mean that there is no one size that would fit for all companies. You always have to rethink which criteria would bestly define your business, and with such an attitude, you can really reach a positive impact on the environment. Because the problem is that there are many things that are related to the environment. Yeah. Even the social corporate responsibility is also related to the ESG. And some companies expected that they will write the CS corporate social responsibility strategy, and say, oh, it's our new mask, and it will work well because it have worked, let's say, 20 years ago. But now it's not different, because with ESG, one is the application of the criteria. Another side that the customers are trying to understand what exactly the company is trying to do. And the customers are now more and more convenient with ESG. It might be, maybe they will not understand what is ESG itself, but they will look about the carbon footprint, about other tendencies that are happening in the market. So for each business, it's very important to understand that ESG might have a different impact to their sector, and to see if it's possible and what kind of the results might be achieved.
All right, so that's how you can measure it, because it's not dependent on one sector. All right. So how do you incorporate ESG considerations into an investment process of a company, maybe?
Yeah, that's actually a tough question. I haven't been working in the investment itself, but usually the businesses have to prepare a certain policy on ESG, and to have the indicators which they follow, and they have also targets how it was achieved or haven't been achieved. And in the investment process, usually it's more important for the banks, and banks are asking that information to provide. So if a company has the policy, so that's one thing. If they have the targets, if these targets have been achieved, if there is a review process about the achievement, or if there is any persons who are devoted to follow this. And afterwards, after all these measures fills in certain reports, the bank could make either more positive decision towards your business or less positive. So that's in a very theoretical way. In practice, probably those people who are working in the banks, especially maybe in the national banks, could go deeper into the subject and give a better perspective how it works, because mostly that probably it's maybe it's developed by artificial intelligence. Maybe it's not a person who is looking. Maybe it's just someone's ticking the box. So these aspects should be taken into account when we're talking about the investment process.
All right. So what do you think about the trade-off between the financial performance and the ESG performance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the trade-off, that's also a very good question, and I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer to that question. I would say that overall, when we're talking about the ESG, it's very important that we would move from the ticking the box approach towards the real measurement of the ESG indicators' impact towards the environment. And with that, we can see a certain positive results, firstly for the business and for the environment. And afterwards, all the problems might be solved in that way.
All right. So let's also talk about the role of of engagement in the ESG investing process. So what do you think about it? How is it defined, the role of engagement in the ESG investing process?
With the introduction of the EU taxonomy, we have at least a better understanding how the environmental indicators should be applied by the businesses. So more or less that process is becoming more transparent. The companies have to report on certain indicators, so what they have achieved, what they didn't achieve, and more or less that's a good thing. But there are some problems that when we're talking about the ESG and impact in investing, is that sometimes it's really hard to understand what was the real impact for the environment, and if it was at all, especially some requirements that so for some businesses it's really hard to achieve a certain requirements, especially if you work in the services businesses. You have to change you have to put a lot of extra thinking to understand what is your impact and how it should be defined, and for the law firm, it's really hard to understand, okay, what we can do in the environment, because most of the lawyers' work is you are using the computer, and you need some light, and so usually it's really hard to define. Okay, so we can call ourselves that we're ESG transparent. We can have a sustainability report, but what the measurements should be included in that. So if that would be probably my very, very broad and very in some ways vague answer to your question, but I think so. That's the things that must be discussed in the company itself to reach when we're talking about the new result.
All right. So sticking to the role of ESG, what do you think about the role of ESG in risk management?
I think so that situation between the war situation that Russia has started against the Ukraine, I think so it was a good example that if you do not have a good ESG overview, a good ESG risk strategy, it probably you might lose a fortune. Because usually, if the company is ESG transparent, it doesn't mean that they will be able to regulate many things and avoid many risks. And so ESG could help you to define the market itself and exclude those markets which are very unstable or very with a high risk. Let's say Russia. In some ways, a good risk management strategy can help towards some problems, and we probably know, let's say, already the iconical case of. Actually, I forgot the name of the company, but the company was working with its counterpart in Malaysia. And it seemed that everything was okay because they have ESG criteria. They saw that everything is working, and the information that came from the directors was overall good. But the company got the major company that worked in Europe got additional information that it might be some violations of the labor standards in the company, and they initiated audits. And it was seen that the company, the counterpart, have used forced labor. There was certain underpayment, and it was clear that some information that the counterpart has provided was already faked. So these criteria, the application of these criteria, the audit process at least helped the company firstly to terminate the contract, so they save some money. Also helped to avoid certain risks related to, let's say, public opinion of a company related to human rights, because all the companies are interested to have a high profile on human rights and avoid these things. So introduction of ESG metrics into your risk management policy, it's a good thing. At least I do believe that in a couple of years, ESG will become a hygiene. Everyone will understand it as a must-have, and sooner you will adapt to this tendency. The sooner the situation will be better for you, or at least you can get the competitive advantage compared to other businesses.
Yeah. So do you agree that ESG is also shaping public policy and regulations?
Sure, I think so. That we grew when I was growing. The environment was not something. It was a good thing. Everyone was like environment. Everyone is surrounded by the environment, and you do not have to care that much. When I started to work in the Ministry of Environment, at that time, environmental aspects were important, but they'd never been a priority. Usually, all the priorities were somewhere else. So the Minister of Environment was the only one who was trying to push something like to have extra targets, etc. I think so that the Green Deal in the European Union became an icebreaker in this area. We see that it's a huge boost of regulation initiatives related to ESG. Definitely after a couple of years, we will need to redefine how we understand ESG, what aspects should be involved in ESG or not. But the discourse already is happening, and there are more voices who are talking, not only the companies who are trying to do something good for the environment, not only the officials that work for the government, but also the NGOs, even the customers who are interested that the product they buy is environmentally friendly, that it was created without the forced labor, that people who created the product was not underpaid. So these things are getting more important, and I do believe that especially the Green Deal became one of the documents that shaped the way how the discussion on this area is going. And definitely, as we see the ambition of, at least in Brussels, with this commission, it's likely to stay. It might happen that the dialogue might have a little bit turns, and maybe some aspects, some ambitions will be lowered, because it's very nice to have an ambition, but sometimes it's very hard to
achieve it
in practice and achieve it. But I do believe that environmental aspects will stay here for a long time, and as soon as you understand the essence, the importance of this, the better for you.
Yeah, because I even noticed when buying flight tickets and everything, now you get a measurement of the carbon footprint that you saved and how much you're going to produce. And the same goes with couriers. When you pick up a package nowadays, they are already telling you how much carbon footprint you saved by going to a local post box. So yeah, let's also talk about, since now we approach climate change and then labor. So what do you think about the role of ESG in addressing global challenges such as the climate change and also inequality? Because that's something we also need to touch base on.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the ESG and climate, it's quite clear that usually one of the metrics in the letter E is related to the to the climate change in a broad sense, and
environment.
that's where it probably when we're talking about the climate change and especially about the carbon footprint for the companies, it's more or less understandable that how the impact might be counted and what aspects should be taken into account when the product is created and the product is transported and sold to the customer. And even for the customer, the climate change overall, the idea is more or less clear that we're living in a situation and we have a lot of problems with the climate change. Let's say some areas which haven't, which are in the so-called mid Europe, let's say even Lithuania, never before have faced such thing as droughts. Sometimes, it was possible to have a couple of weeks when there is no rain, but we have not suffered severe droughts. In 2019, severe droughts were there. 2 times it was shown that we have severe drought and there is a lack of water and rain. So ESG, applying ESG criteria and supporting businesses to work on the climate change is very important. Because the businesses itself are the ones who apply all the rules that are created by the government. And the better companies will perform on these issues, the better results will be achieved. The problem is probably sometimes the companies just don't know what to do exactly and how to reach one or another target. But I do believe that with proper consultancy and work with your Minister of Environment, the results might be achieved. So if I would try to conclude on this question, so yes, climate change is an important part of the ESG, and businesses are the ones who are able to achieve a real impact towards environment, and it might be related to various aspects, not only to your product itself, but also to packaging. The packaging is also one of the areas which have a huge environmental impact. How your product is designed, it's also one of the ways how you can achieve a better impact for the climate. And it's very important, and maybe it's not related to the businesses itself, but more or less for the customers. Less traveling by planes is a very good and positive for the environment and for the climate change. But for us itself, it's really hard to admit the fact that you could travel less. And not travel, let's say, for your long weekend vacation and choose other means, let's say trains. So that's why in the European Commission we can see the idea that at least the European capitals should be connected with the trains, and traveling by train should become a new normal in a couple of years. And actually, it's quite interesting that in France, I think so, there is a regulation that if it's possible to travel to a place in France in 3 hours by train, you cannot go the same. You cannot go by plane. So there is restrictions towards that's what I was looking for. So that's certain restrictions to use the internal flights. Well, I'm not sure if they already starting to use it, or it will be started to use from the 24th or 25th year. But the rule already exists and is discussed.
I mean, we drive everywhere. We have a hybrid. So we basically, to our conferences that we organize, we never fly. Some of our team members are flying there, but we always go by car. Because we travel with our dogs. So it's a nice trip. Saving on the gas.
Yeah, and traveling by train is more comfortable because you can also work on the train. Because
if you're living somewhere. Yeah, if you're living somewhere which is very well connected with the other train lines, but unfortunately we're not living there. So as a closing question, I would like to ask, since the next session is about artificial intelligence, I would like to ask about, what do you think about the role of ESG in driving innovation and driving a competitive advantage?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question, and I do believe that ESG itself created a new discussion field for the innovations, because environmental aspects needs a certain innovative approach, either to measuring certain aspects, either to applying them. And we saw already that we have a small startups, small NGOs who are working on the very specific areas that are related to ESG, and they are creating methodologies how to count the carbon footprint. What would be the impact if we change one packaging to another one? So these things are very important. And if we would talk specifically on the artificial intelligence, definitely it is one of the means which are used in checking the overall ESG performance of the companies. The banks are trying to introduce these things in their systems. So I'm for the innovations in the ESG field, and I do believe that more innovations will come, especially with new criteria that will be introduced, with a new understandings of how businesses can work, and these things will have at least hopefully will have a better impact for the environment.
All right. So Arnas, thank you so much for your time. I know it's very hard to get you on to speak on screen nowadays. So keep up the good work, and hope to see you in Vilnius or Riga someday. And if you'll have any closing remarks, you are more than welcome to.
Yeah, so thank you, Zoltan, for inviting me. And I'm not sure if I was able to answer all the questions. I do believe there will be even more questions that have arisen from the things I have mentioned. But definitely, let's keep in touch, and let's continue our work on ESG, on the environment. If you have any of those who are listening to this podcast, feel free to contact me or add me on LinkedIn, or just to discuss any questions, or just to explain any rules or different views. If you do not agree with me, it's also good. It's also a good thing to know. And so thank you for organizing this, and I hope to see you in Riga, in Vilnius, or maybe in Brussels.
Oh yeah, maybe someday. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Be sure to check back next week for the next Hipther Talks, and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.